Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Dividock. I'm the supervisor for the Planning, Zoning, and Land Use Unit here in Oakland County. Welcome to today's Planners Gathering, coordinating with regional energy utilities. Just a few reminders before we get started. The meeting is being recorded, and if you have any questions, please use the chat function in Zoom and send your questions, direct them to Jim Schaefer. Jim will moderate a question and answer session after the presentations. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. We have Jennifer Whitteaker from DTE, Lauren Royston from Consumers Energy, and Adelaide Pascaris from ITC Holdings. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Much, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here this morning. My name is Jennifer Whitteaker. I am the Government Affairs Liaison at Oakland County for DTE. Today, I am joined by our experts in the planning area, Sebastian Sarkeesian, who is our planning supervisor in Northern Oakland County, and Mary Peters, who is our planning supervisor in Southern Oakland County. We're also joined by Jamal Robertson, who works with me in Oakland. So I've got this executive summary here. I'm not going to read it all for you, but I just wanted to let you know this morning's presentation is really about early communication and collaboration. Mary and Sebastian are going to go through some of our proposed process changes to help our customers more efficiently connect or upgrade their utility services. And we're looking forward to working with all of you to make this process as easy as possible for the customers. So I'm going to send it off to Sebastian.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. So yes, so as Jennifer said, so any type of planning, whether it's a new or upgrading a utility service, it's a collaboration between the customer, the permitting municipalities, and the utility. My 20 plus years of experience with DTE, I find that the projects, whether they be big or small, the earlier that there is communication and collaboration, at the end of the day, the smoother the process is and the smoother the project goes. So many inefficiencies can be mitigated with clear communication, collaboration among DTE communities and our mutual customers. Contacting DTE early in the process, it's going to allow discussions around standards, guidelines that could prevent a lot of these delays, right? Some of these issues are potential safety hazards like OSHA violations. Many times builders will start construction and halfway through they're realizing that they're too close to our existing primary, secondary lines. And as a result, projects get put on hold until these violations can be cleared. Whereas, if they reach out to DTE early, we could maybe design something and move the lines out of the way ahead of time so as not to disrupt the construction. Coordinating with the municipalities to include DTE equipment on the developer checklist. And a lot of times when these developers are laying out their buildings, their landscaping, they don't take into consideration the DTE equipment that will need to be put in place so that we can provide power to them. A lot of times there's discussions after the fact that where they don't give us any space for our equipment. And as such, they have to either redesign their property, redesign their building, or again, there has to be a massive relocation of equipment to provide them with power. Again, if we have those early discussions, we could talk about where DTE can and can't install lines. We can't just place our poles wherever we want. As much as people like to think that DTE can do that, we don't. We don't have the ability to do that. We also have clearances we have to maintain. We have guidelines we have to maintain. We have to be able to maintain our equipment, and as such, there are certain areas or locations or places that we can't just set our equipment. And again, we could have the discussion if there's any existing equipment on the property. Many times people will buy a piece of land and there's DTE lines that go right down the middle of it, and they'll be at the planning phase ahead of talking to DTE, and we'll need to relocate the equipment out of their way. And again, if we have these discussions early, we could talk about locations, come up with agreed upon locations, and give costs early to these customers so they know what to expect from DTE. Another thing people need to take into consideration are the easements for our equipment. Whether we place overhead or underground facilities, we will require easements for them. A lot of the times our easements are 12 feet, sometimes greater, sometimes smaller. And not all developers take that into consideration. They need to also understand that we cannot put our equipment underneath permanent structures. So again, if we have this conversation early with the developers, we could potentially avoid some of these the issues that come up with getting easements. Another thing is the expectations regarding energization without delays. Especially, I'd say the last year or so, we've run into supply chain issues with transformers. As a result, it has caused some delays. I think a lot of people who have dealt with DT in the past and know that we attempt to get transformers equipment in a very timely manner. This is causing a lot of delays, and I think it's catching some people off guard. And again, if we have these conversations early, we can let people know that these delays are coming and hopefully plan accordingly. And one of the last things would be, the municipality requirements and the timelines for permitting. It seems, aside from MDOT, RCOC, a lot of cities, townships also have their own permitting and their own requirements, which again can add either cost or additional time to the projects, or again, these developers, especially if it's, say, their first time working within these municipalities, they may not be aware of these special permits that will need to be acquired. So a lot of the planners, they've been working in these areas for years. They have that expertise. They can talk to, kind of guide the developers and bridge that gap between the municipality and the developer. So what we're proposing is a new type of framework for planning and permitting process that's going to focus on collaboration, right, to mitigate the efficiencies and at the end of the day to meet the customer's requests. It's basically a three-phase framework. Phase one, you have the conceptual scope development. So we would have the customer share conceptual plans with DTE and the city. These aren't the final plans. These would be early plans, ones that could ideally, if need be changed very easily and not affect anything as far as timeline of the project. The customer would exchange any of the necessary documents with DTE early to align with the scope. The earlier we know customers' needs as far as voltage, as far as load, DTE can do what we can on our end to make sure that we have everything we need to provide them with power. The customer would work with the utilities to identify any potential conflicts. Again, if we have facilities that go down the middle of the property and need to be relocated, the earlier we identify this and the earlier we can work with the developer, the better a chance we can move the equipment out of their way prior to construction. And then if need be, DT engineering would develop an initial scope. Depending on the size of the project, we would potentially need to reach out to our engineering group. And it could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be to look at the potential load on an existing circuit to see if we have the capacity to feed that customer. And if we don't, it would then go into what we call a method of service, where we would have to make circuit modifications so that we could feed that customer. These circuit modifications could add anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to a project. So again, the earlier that we address these, the earlier we can work on these and get these in the works and taken care of for the customer. The second stage would be the strategic plan alignment. So DTE optimizes the plan to meet the customer's needs, right? After we have the initial meeting, we come away with an understanding of what the customer needs and what we can do to meet their needs, to meet their goals. We would review their plans internally, and we would ensure inconsistencies with the area plan to make sure that they are building everything properly, make sure that we can meet all of our guidelines for our equipment, and make sure that any clearances would need to be maintained can be. We would review the findings with the cities, just to make sure that there is no surprises that come up, make sure that what we would like to do, what the customer would like to do, is in line with what the cities will allow or what the cities will okay. The city will then approve the customer's plans. And then from there, we can move on to DTE, providing a method of service if need be. Again, that's not something that needs to be done for every project, but a lot of the projects, especially anything that requires greater than 300 kVA, typically would need to go to engineering to make sure that, again, we have capacity on the circuit. And then the final stage would be executing this method of service. So we would review the details of the service with the customer, and we own the execution of the plan. And then DTE would also lead customer communication on service installations. We would be with them from beginning to construction, letting them know timelines, letting them know if there's any type of long lead equipment, where we stand with those, if there's any potential delays as far as getting any of the equipment in and getting them energized in a timely manner. So the benefits, right, from early engagement would be, site plans before submission or any type of proven bodies to avoid any type of delays. You benefit from consistent communication, including information on any delays in construction, any type of costly relocations, and any of the handoffs that we have throughout the process, because most people will deal with a planner in the beginning of the process, but once the design is completed, it then goes into our scheduling and coordination phase, and there's a handoff there, and then the project is now owned by a case manager. And lastly, customer would understand if there's any type of lot splits, the utility easements and right-of-ways. Again, this is an important step. We cannot put any new equipment onto customer property without any easements or right-of-way.
All right, thanks, Sebastian. Some of our customer guidelines that we provide to avoid delays when connecting customers would to be understand demand and load, right? What is your demand? What is your load? And to be accurate in your demand and your load, because every time a developer or a customer changes the demand or the load, then we got to go back and start to resize and look if we need a bigger transformer, wire, things like that. So that always will give a delay if you don't have all of the information up front. DTE requires a utility easement, right? So the most important thing to avoid delays in this is to make sure that you have a warranty deed, it's signed, and it is recorded with in this case, the Oakland County, right? It's got to be a recorded deed. And then the other thing is the 270 degrees deflection on an underground cable. When you design a layout, you've got to make sure we only have so many bends. And so you've got to take that into consideration when you want to figure out where you're going to run your underground cable. Also, you've got to understand that OSHA requires a 10-foot horizontal working clearance from the utility lines. What's important about this OSHA requirement for the 10-foot is that it's from the outermost wire that you're going to be working to. It's not from the middle of the pole. So you don't go from the middle of the pole and figure out where the 10 feet is. You go from the outermost wire on the cross arm and you figure 10 feet from there. Equipment must be on private property. A lot of times, especially in the city of Royal Oak, they will not allow any of our equipment in road right away. So you've got to plan to have any pad mount transformers if you need primary switch cabinet, any of that. You need to make sure you have the appropriate place on your property, and you also need to make sure that you have the proper clearances to maintain that equipment. So a lot of times we will request that you have we get a 10-foot easement for that property, because we also need the easement for the equipment. And the other thing is to obtain clear requirements for city permits. In the city of Royal Oak, for example, the person that's doing the work needs to get the permit, not DTE. So that could cause a delay because when we hand it off to construction, now our contractor has to get the permit. Where maybe in other utility or other areas like the city of Southfield, right? We can apply for the permit and we can get that up front and have that ready when we go to construction. So understanding how the city is requiring the permitting is going to avoid delays. One example that we have is a new construction in a dense urban area, right? Public safety. In order to make the building safe for construction, much taller poles were needed to be installed, and the primary wire was installed on armless construction, right? Sometimes we can even do alley arms, which was separate from the original service installation request. Because when we got there, we realized we didn't have enough space, and not enough space was taken into consideration to give us that overhead clearance, right? And the permanent service location. The city approved a lot line to lot line construction. And unfortunately, this left no room for our pad mount transformer to be installed on the private property. And it made making the installation of the service to the customer difficult, inefficient, and it caused a lot of delays. So it's really, really important that we get upfront site plans to take a look at. The customer expectations on things like that is that the customer expected that the pad mount transformer would be installed in the city's road right away, which was not the case. And that DTE would put their service line under the alley. And again, that was something that DTE could not do. The city expectations. They came into it thinking that that they expected that DTE would provide overhead service to the customer. This is not our industry standards, nor MPSC preferred. It is to go underground. It was also not a viable solution because the customer's load was greater than what overhead equipment is rated to provide. The most we can go overhead, if we go overhead, is for transformers is 500 kVA. A lot of these bigger developments that are going lot line to lot line are much larger than 500 kVAs, and there's just not a way to service them overhead. DTE challenges. There were no overhead options that would comply with the industry standards nor the MPSC rules. Communication regarding the type of service that could be provided was disjointed among DTE, the city, and the customer, and it led to a lot of miscommunication and customer delays. Now, an example of a new construction in a pre-municipal approval, right? This is the best case scenario. The developer will reach out to DTE and describes their upcoming project, lets us know where it's at, where they're going to build, and DTE will send them a will serve letter saying, yes, we will serve your development. And then in that way, the communication is established, and the DT will take a look and see what facilities are in the way, right? And then we'll give a precursory, and this happened actually in Royal Oak, where the developer reached out to the planner and said, I need a will serve letter, here are my plans. She took a quick look at the plans that were not yet approved by the city of Royal Oak, and she said, we just want to make you aware that we have these utilities and this is where they're at. You need to take that into consideration when you submit your plans. And right now, our utilities are in your way. So between that communication, then the developer then can make some design changes before he sends them to the city for plan approval, right? So then once we had the discussion and they decide where they're going to place their development and get their site plan, they'll send it to the city for approval. And then once approved, the developer will contact DTE to have a work order created and a project timeline created. This helps with the customer experience. The developer has all of the electrical requirements, the safety guidelines needed to design their project. It helps with the city experience, right? The city can be assured that any electrical connection issues are mitigated since the developer already contacted DTE. And the DTE experience, right? Redesigns are mitigated since the developer communicated early on before the design was finalized, and this gives it a much greater chance that we will meet the customer energization date. The customer, city, and DTE benefit from a more efficient process and avoid costly delays.
Thanks, Mary. So I'm gonna end the presentation here. When we were contacted to do this presentation, we were pretty excited. Many of you know we're going into a period of intense capital improvements and construction. And so we're going to really need much more collaboration and communication with our municipal partners than ever before. All of this in order to improve reliability, provide the service that our customers deserve, and to increase our capacity. So over the next 5 years, we intend to invest more than $9 billion into the grid to make it safe and more reliable. Our goal is to cut the number of outages by 30% and the duration by half within the next 5 years. And so in order to reach that goal, we're focusing on 4 main areas. Modernizing the grid. You'll hear us talk about this a lot. We're installing automation equipment. It allows us to isolate damage during an outage and then restore other customers. It also allows us to transfer load where available. We intend to install 10,000 of these smart grid devices in the next 4 years. We also are looking to update our substations, provide upgrades, expand them, and build new. And we are converting our old systems, our 48 kV and our 8.3 kV systems to 13.2, again, to improve reliability and capacity. We're really looking to tighten up our maintenance program. We call it hardening the system to make our grid more resilient to the severe weather that's coming through. And of course, replacing aging and at-risk equipment. And then many of you know, we've been on this journey to really get our tree trim maintenance done and tighten up that cycle time. Half the time that our customers are without power is due to trees. And so we will have all of our service territory on cycle for tree trimming by the end of 2025. We have provided the presentation to the county, and so you're free, to distribute it as needed. We've got some appendix issues here. This is basically the process that we would employ with new customers, new builds, and then the OSHA clearances that are required. But if I could just emphasize, we really enjoyed having to work on this because we know that our collaboration with you, our planners and our municipalities, is so important for us to be able to meet these goals of improving reliability and increasing capacity. That's about it in a nutshell. It's about the letter C today. If I can harken back to my Sesame Street days, it's about the letter C: customers, communities, communication, coordination, and collaboration. If we can get all of those as our priorities, I think this major investment period for us will go much more smoother and much easier for our customers. So with that, I am going to introduce my colleague and utility bestie friend, Lauren Royston from Consumers, and she's going to run you through their planning process.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lauren Royston with Consumers Energy. I am joined by my colleague, Terrence Daniels. He's the manager for engineering here at Consumers. And we just wanted to share a bit of information with you all today. Hopefully, like Jennifer stated it perfectly about collaboration, communication. The earlier we know information, the better. So I just wanted to give you all an overview first of, consumers and what we have. Yes, we are a completely different company. I know a lot of times we people don't realize that there's two utility companies out there, unless you get both bills. But wanted to give you kind of like a highlight of where we have service. So where you see this blue on the map, that's our gas territory. So, Oakland County is right there in the big green. And if you notice in the north part of the quadrant, we do have some combined territory. So that's our area. Your Holly, that's our area. Your Rose Township, they are a dual customer where they receive electric and gas. But by and large, probably over 98% of our customers are gas customers here in Oakland County. So Consumers Energy, founded in 1886, a very old company. We have over 8,500 employees and contractors, and we serve 6.7 million residents. We service 6.7 million residents, but 1.8 million customers are our gas customers. And in delivering gas, we have close to 28,000 miles of gas distribution pipeline that we manage, over almost 2,500 miles of transmission pipeline. We have 8 compressor stations, and we have 8 storage fields. See here to make sure I put that. I'm not the. Okay, so now just giving an again, that was an overview. We have 1.8 million customers, and I must say that probably close to 1 million of those customers are natural gas customers here in Oakland County. So to get the gas to our customers, it flows through this series of interconnected facilities. We purchase gas from an interstate supplier. The gas is measured and the quality is checked at a transfer meter site before we deliver the gas into our system. We have compression stations and storage stations, and they're used to move the natural gas through our transmission pipeline and how to go from our underground storage fields, and then the gas flows from the passive least resistance. So therefore, our compression stations are used during winter withdrawal when the pressures are lower in the storage fields. And then the opposite is true for injecting that into our system. So our compression stations have gas processing equipment that cleans and conditions the gas after we withdraw it. And then we have our transmission and our city gates. And so those are a lot of things that you may be familiar with in your communities. We have multiple city gates throughout Oakland County. So the transmission pipeline system, it's highly interconnected, and it transports gas across the state, and it flows into our city gates, which then separates our gas from our transmission and our distribution. The gas is odorized. That's that egg smell that we all know about. And then it's regulated down so that it can be at a lower pressure and sent to your home and to your businesses. So that's through what we call our distribution system. Next, as I mentioned, over 50% of the load is in Southeast Michigan that we have with our gas transmission and distribution system. But I really beg it to say that the large portion of that is right here in Oakland County. But as you can see, we also service gas, about 20% through the Flint, Saginaw, Midland area, then another 20% in our Lansing, Jackson, Kalamazoo area. So next, I wanted to talk about, so I do know that there are some communities where everyone is not connected to our gas system. So it was a program that we had previously, but it's a program that we've now reinstated. If you have new development and that new development is not on our natural gas service, perhaps they have propane, there's now assistance, there's help to collaborate and get all that gas back to the Consumers Energy. So we call that our customer attachment program. If you have new development, new neighborhoods that are not connected to consumers energy for natural gas. We've hopefully created a more streamlined process. You would, and it takes one phone call. It takes one phone call and one person out of that whole development to create a project. So you would call this 800 number, our customer contact number, which is 800-477-5050. It's a prompt 4 if you ask, but again, you were asking specifically about natural service customer attachment program. So if you start with that process, then all the other customers that will want, all the other households or businesses that will want to connect to that gas pipe, that gas process could be then attached to that one phone call and that one project that would be established for that. So that was something I wanted to share. And then next, this is just, again, pre-planning. So I'm kind of prepping up information before I get our planning manager on here. He has all the good information that you all will want to know as far as how to connect with him when you have civic projects on tap. So before you start construction, we have, I showed you that map early on in the slides where we have almost 2,500 miles of transmission pipeline. So it's very important that if you as a municipality are getting ready to conduct any type of project which involves digging in the ground and it's going to be near one of our transmission pipeline, we want you to connect us early on in that process. So we do have a main manager or planner for that. His name is Kevin Couturier. And, I'm gonna make sure I send you all this. This is the actual flyer. I can send you this flyer so that you have information to contact us. And that way that planning is just, it does wonders when we collaborate and ahead of time if there's going to be any type of work being done over a transmission pipeline. And we can, navigate and plan around that. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Terrence Daniels, where he is going to talk more about this 10-year natural gas delivery plan and why we do all the work. We do all of this construction work, and then also how that ties into any of the civic work that you all may be doing locally. So with that, I ask for Terrence to join.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And thank you, Lauren, for the information that you covered so far. So with that, our natural gas delivery plan is our infrastructure replacement plan for all of our vintage mains, which include anything from standard pressure, medium pressure, to high pressure. And in those plans, we've been trying to do them as grids and segment projects. So those projects will be seen all throughout the state of Michigan for our gas territory. So not just here in the metro area, but also in the Northeast and in the Southwest of Michigan. Our plan is to cover about 100 miles per year. It is a pretty intense program. As you guys know, the Detroit metro area is one of the oldest areas in the state of Michigan. And so it's requires a lot of coordination and interaction with municipalities, the road commissions, and also the different organizations that are all working in the road right away. So it's pretty expansive right now. I know we're working in Royal Oak Township and the Ferndale and Oak Park. So those cities are currently in our process here in the metro area. We also have projects going on over in the Macomb County area, in the southern portion of that county as well. So with that, Lauren, if you could go to the next slide. And everyone, excuse my voice. My allergies have gotten the best of me. So if I sound a little rough, it's just I barely have a voice. This next map is our coverage for civic projects in the metro area. So as you can see, primarily in Oakland County, And the red, I believe, is Ernie Martinique. Down in the light blue is Sherry Payne. And then in the purplish kind of dark blue color is Chris Snyder. Those three individuals cover Oakland County for civic projects. So they typically stay in communication with the city planners and city engineers to acquire any project plans. We try to get plans as far as 3 to 5 years out. If a city has planning that goes out that far, we also share our NGDP plans with, which is our main replacement program with them, which we usually try to have plans at least 3 years out. And that, in both instances, that's a lot of coordination with all the permitting agencies, environmental customers. There's a lot of letters that go out in terms of communicating both the third parties and residents and business owners to make them aware of all the projects that are taking place. We do perform pre-construction meetings where permits are reviewed. We also go through all the layout plans, whether it's the plans from a city or a city planner, or if it's from the consumer's energy itself. And we also make sure that all the code requirements, any easements that are required for our projects are addressed well in advance before construction is started. So we usually have a checklist that we go through with all the different agencies just to make sure that nothing's missed. We often do site visits with different parties depending on complexity. A good example would be the I-75 modernization project, where we had to work very closely with MDOT and the municipals in terms of relocating high pressure gas lines that cross the highway, where we had to relocate some of the feeds that we had. So that required a lot of cross-functional work between both the utility and like Michigan 75, which was a conglomerate of MDOT, their design companies that they contracted with and everything, to try to make sure that those projects were successful and completed on time, on schedule, and hopefully also at or below cost. So we try to make sure we strongly partner with anybody that has a project out there, in order to make sure that, you know, everybody has the best opportunity for success.
Morning, everyone. I'm Adele Pascaris with ITC's Local Government and Community Affairs team. And I want to thank my colleagues at DT and Consumer, because they will make my presentation much easier, because of a lot of the things that were covered today apply for us as well. But I wanted to give a quick overview who we are, because some of the maybe newer planners may not be familiar with ITC. You don't see our name when you get your electric bill, but we're an electric transmission company. So what we do is electric transmission, all the high voltage transmission lines that you see on the sides of the highway, that's us. And this is our area of operations. You can see we're located in the Midwest. And as of 2016, we were acquired by Fortis, which is a Canadian company. They're located in Newfoundland, and they're a leader in both gas and electric operations. And we own over 16,000 miles of transmission lines, over 565 stations and substations, and our service territory is over 90,000 square miles. And here are the states where we're located. The majority of our assets are in Michigan and Iowa. We're also a member of 4 RTOs, and I'll cover what those are later. So it's the regional transmission operator, or the planning agencies that we work with. And as I said, we focus solely on transmission. So we're the blue part. We move electricity from the point of generation to the point of distribution. We partner with our local utilities, with DT and Consumers, to deliver that electricity to your homes and businesses. For ITC Michigan, we operate over 8,000, now the number is 8,700 circuit miles of power transmission lines serving most of the Michigan's Lower Peninsula. And we're composed of 2 operating companies. So if you see applications from us that may say ITC Transmission or METC, is the same company. So it's ITC Holdings. It's just we have the two different operating companies from when we purchased the transmission systems from consumers and DTE. So ITC Transmission serves mostly the Southeast Michigan, and the Michigan Electric Transmission Company, or METC, serves most of the rest of the Lower Peninsula, so the west side of the state and all the rest. And since our inception in 2003, we have invested over $7 billion in electric infrastructure. So for ITC, since we took over ITC Transmission in 2003, our outages in our system were reduced by 48%. And then for METC, since we took over in 2006, we have seen outages improve by 24%. And these improvements were in system reliability, with a sustained investment that we've made in targeted capital and maintenance programs. And this is what some of our structures look like. So a lot of steel structures, wood, lattice. We have over 55,000 transmission structures, and I'm sure you've all seen them. We also have some wood poles. We've been working hard on replacing some of those wood poles. And in a lot of cases, so we're hearing a common theme here with collaboration. We collaborate and we co-locate. So that's another C for today, co-locate, also with DTE, Consumers Energy. So we all work together closely. And the substations, we have over 300 electric substations with ITC assets. Some of these substations also have some control houses. So oftentimes you'll see an application for a control house, and oftentimes we have to explain to the various municipalities, it's like a trailer, but we put our electrical equipment there. So our engineers go, and that's where they locate their relay panels and other telecommunication devices so that they're able to operate equipment, for example, to open a breaker remotely. So that's why we need that building permit, so we're able to do these kind of things. And in terms of regulation, we're very highly regulated at the federal level. FERC is our Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which regulates the wholesale sales and interstate transmission of electricity, natural gas, and oil. And then the North American Electric Corporation assures the effective and efficient reduction of risk to the reliability and security of the electric grid. We work closely with NERC, regional entities, and federal agencies to enhance the cybersecurity of the bulk power system. We also work with the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Energy, and also with law enforcement. In terms of our projects, so we work on all kinds of projects, from small scale to large scale projects, substation projects, and also system network upgrades for new generation. And this is our transmission development cycle. And it takes, in order for us to kind of determine what is our next transmission project, we look at different studies with varying system needs across regions, variable resources and locations, load impacts, and efficiencies across the complex and evolving transmission grid. We partner with local utilities on projects, develop contracted transmission projects, and tie generation sources to the grid. We, as an electric transmission company, we share no financial or ownership interest in power generation or distribution services. So we take a non-discriminatory view of the transmission grid expansion and access to the transmission grid. So for the planning, we have our 3 steps: the reliability, efficiency, resiliency. So those are our 3 key components. And we're working with the RTOs, which is the regional transmission organizations. They're the regional oversight entities, and we're part of 4, as you can see on the map. So MISO North, MISO South, SPP, PJM. And these RTOs, what they do is that they facilitate competition among wholesale suppliers. They provide non-discriminatory access to transmission by scheduling and monitoring the use of the transmission grid, perform planning and operations. And as a result of a lot of the studies, for example, as a result of MISO studies, it was determined that there is a need for transmission, and ITC will be building in the next 5 years part of our long-range transmission planning projects, over 100 miles of new electric transmission, mostly on the west side of the state. We're also facilitating import capabilities with Indiana as well. And for the engineering, from project inception to completion, we have our planning engineers, our design engineers, the project engineers who are involved in every step of that project. And I think someone earlier mentioned MDOT relocation, so we're heavily involved with those as well. And we're constantly communicating with the various agencies to give us time. It could take 2 years for us to move one of our existing underground or overhead lines. That's why early engagement is key. For siting, so this is a big one. After a transmission project moves through the regional planning process and we have a cost allocation mechanism in place, we begin the process of determining the exact route the transmission line will take, which is also known as siting. And since ITC's rates are federally regulated, the responsibility for siting falls to state regulators with input from landowners and other community voices. And our team, the local government community team, we serve as a liaison between our operating companies and local governments, community leaders, regulatory agencies, and community groups. And we also are involved with obtaining permits and approvals, organizing public information meetings and open houses. We just held over 20 open houses last October for our upcoming LRTP project on the west side of the state. And it was a great opportunity to get feedback from the landowners, and we take them very seriously. So we take them back and then we compile those comments and send them to the MPSC. We're also trying to look at different route alternatives, but to minimize impact, also working with Eagle and all the other agencies. Also, we involve our legal and real estate team when we're looking at siting, because we're impacting many stakeholders and regulators, and we want to make sure that they all are heard and they have a voice. For construction, we maintain a best-in-class construction standards and techniques to provide a reliable and robust transmission system. Our construction activities range anywhere from small projects, as we're maybe reconductoring or rebuilding existing lines, to upgrading segments that facilitate local connections to large-scale transmission projects that serve as the backbone of the regional electricity systems. After our transmission line goes into effect, ITC remains in the community as a caretaker of the infrastructure, corporate citizen, taxpayer. We also create long-lasting mutual partnerships with residents, businesses, and local leaders. And then as part of our preventative system maintenance, we drive continuous improvement on a cost and care for the systems. We have this find and fix it, and then we're year after year 100% NER compliant. We also, after a construction project is finished, we ensure that we're working with the road commission, with the drain commission, that we're doing all of the restoration that's needed. For vegetation management, and this can be a bit of a hot topic in our industry, unfortunately, vegetation and high voltage power lines are not a good combination, and can cause outages and blackouts, which are inconvenient, costly, and also potentially dangerous. So ITC maintains an integrated vegetation management program to protect electric reliability. We look for best approaches to preventing vegetation caused outages and communicate with residents, with the municipalities, also with personal contacts about plant maintenance activity. By having this integrated vegetation management program, we're including diverse, stable, natural greenways in the communities we serve, also selective removal of incompatible species in urban, suburban, and rural transmission corridors. And we also make an effort. We have allowed a lot of the residents and the communities to be able to plant grasses, wildflowers, low-growing shrubs to thrive in our corridors, even under our lines. We also have a compatible species brochure that I can share with whoever's interested, so that we're educating our communities and we're making sure that our lines are safe, but we're also improving our environments. To give you an idea of your typical electric bill, the US average, as you can see at the bottom, electric transmission, which is the green part, accounts for 12%. Whereas in Michigan, the green part, which is us, electric transmission, ITC, we're about 4.5% of your electric bill. And this is a testament of our capital investments and improvements in the system operations and maintenance, which have lowered the cost to produce and deliver electricity to customers and stakeholders, and help increase also the local economic activities within the states. And the benefits of these investments are calculated to be over 500 million annually. And in closing, we are not just, I like to say we're not just an electric transmission company, but we're also a proud member of your community. We're involved with various agencies and chambers and economic development agencies, and also with community events and environmental initiatives. So we're proud to be a good partner in Oakland County. And thank you for your time.
Thank you to all three of our presenters, actually multiple presenters. You have a number of questions. I'll pull them up here. All right. First question, on average, this is for DTE, on average, how much time there should be allotted for planning with DTE? Jennifer, Sebastian, you want to take a crack at that?
Well, I guess it's going to depend on the scope of the job, but most of our projects will include overhead and an underground component to it. From the point when planning gets the plans, the load information, gives us ample time to review it, allow them to do their design work. If no engineering needs to be involved, planner usually could take anywhere from a couple weeks to potentially a month to do a design. And beyond that, our overhead lead time for construction is roughly 6 to 8 weeks. Underground lead time prior to the whole issues with transformer delays was roughly around 4 weeks. Unfortunately, with the supply chain issues we've been having with transformers, our underground projects have been delayed upwards of, I'd say, 2 to 3 months.
Okay. And there was a similar question, and I think you may have just addressed it, but what are the typical timeframes for stage 1, 2, and 3 for the DTE framework?
Again, so the stage 1, right, would be the planning and design. Again, depending on the scope of the project, that could be anywhere from a couple weeks to potentially a month. After we have design completed, easement secured, payment received, the site is ready, it then goes into our scheduling and coordination phase. And again, overhead work is, depending on the size of the job, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Underground, depending on the scope of the job, typically was anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. But again, with the supply chain issues, it's become a little longer than that.
Okay. Next question. This was the DTE portion. There was a comment that you referred to the developer or the development team, meaning when you refer to the developer making the contact, are you also referring to the development team as the site planner, the engineer, architect on a developer's behalf?
I'll take this one, Sebastian. And yeah, it can just be for the initial contact, it can just be the developer that reaches out to DTE and, kind of gives us the conceptual plan.
But that could also include the development team, I think.
Yeah.
Is the gist of the question.
I'm sorry?
I think the gist of the question is, could that also be the development team, his or her representative?
Yes,
Okay.
or the representative. It doesn't, somebody that has knowledge of the project going on, reaching out to DTE prior.
Perfect. Next question, is the 10,000 smart grid reclosers statewide or just the metro area?
That would be just the DTE area. So we're from Ingham County all the way up to the thumb.
Okay. All right. Right now, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Give it another 15, 20 seconds if anyone had any additional questions.
I
All
did
right.
just want to make sure I share. I just wanted to share real quick, just in case I didn't point this or make that clear. You know, Terrence shared that, you know, we have that map for our planners, you know, depending on where you are in the county to reach out if you have a civic project, or those are the planners that are going to reach out to you if there are grid projects that we are, you know, pipeline replacement projects that we're undertaking. Those are the plans that are going to be reaching out to the municipalities. But if there's ever like new development, new projects, those all start with a phone call to our contact center. So if you know, if you have developers, new construction, anything like that, and they want new gas service, the 1-800-477-5050, that is our, you know, company-wide contact center phone number, and those all start with that number.
Good. And again, just to reiterate, in the chat, you'll see the link to the recorded version of this. So you can go back and catch all of those slides with all the contact information at any time. I do not see any additional questions. So Ryan, you want to close this up?
Yeah, so again, I just want to thank Jennifer, Lauren, Adelaide, Sebastian, Mary, Terrence. Thank you again for joining us today and providing your insight and expertise. Also want to thank everyone for joining today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next scheduled planners gathering on May 22nd, where we'll hear from Jennifer Llewellyn from Workforce Development. We'll hear about some of the programs and services that are available to Oakland County residents, municipalities, and businesses. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful day.